Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. As the United States ramps up pressure on its trading partners to speed up their negotiations, a senior White House official warns that if Trump doesn't get a deal he thinks is good enough, the tariffs will be real. A series of confirmation hearings for President Lee Jae-myung's cabinet will begin today at the National Assembly. Lawmakers will review 18 nominees, including 16 ministerial candidates for 5 days until Friday. President Lee Jae-myung has now appointed 5 new vice ministers for ministries such as Education, Science, and Veterans Affairs. Pressure is mounting for America's trade partners as U.S. President Donald Trump renews his push for sweeping tariffs set to take effect on August 1st. A senior White House official has warned the tariffs are not just a negotiating tactic. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young starts us off.
Washington has emphasized its reciprocal tariffs on trading partners will take effect from next month if President Donald Trump doesn't get a deal he likes. On Sunday local time, in an interview with ABC News, White House National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett said if President Donald Trump doesn't get a deal he thinks is good enough, the tariffs will be real. Hassett implied that Trump was not satisfied with some sketches of deals negotiated by Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and others on his trade team, and believes the deals need to get better. This comes after Trump sent letters to 25 countries over the past week, notifying them of their blanket tariff rates. South Korea, Japan, and Malaysia were handed 25% tariffs, while Mexico and the European Union on Saturday were told to pay up 30%. Regarding the higher 50% rate announced for Brazil, Hassett said Trump had been very frustrated with bilateral negotiations with Brazil and its actions. Trump has also accused the incumbent government of targeting its former president Jair Bolsonaro. In response to Trump's letter, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced that the EU will delay its own imposition of retaliatory tariffs on US goods, originally scheduled to take effect on Monday, until early August. Acknowledging Washington's notice over the weekend, von der Leyen indicated that Brussels prefers to negotiate to seek a solution within the given timeframe. The EU initially prepared a first round of retaliatory tariffs in response to US duties on European steel and aluminium, targeting 21 billion euros worth of American goods with additional duties. While showing willingness to negotiate, European leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, have also voiced determination to defend European interests. Meanwhile, Mexican leader Claudia Sheinbaum struck an optimistic tone, saying she is confident she can reach a deal, saying Trump's letter indicates his intention to negotiate. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The South Korea is now tasked with navigating challenges regarding the alliance with the United States on issues such as tariffs and sharing the burden of costs needed for U.S. troops. For more on what lies ahead for relations between Seoul and Washington, we're joined by Dr. Bruce Bennett, adjunct defense researcher at RAND Corporation.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Right, thanks for joining us. So as we just heard in our previous report, a White House official now warns Trump's tariff threat will be real on August 1st. How do you think the tariff negotiations between Seoul and Washington will unfold?
Well, I think you have to look at the fact that Trump has made some specific requests of South Korea. One of those specific requests, also made by his Secretary of Defense, that South Korea raise its defense budget to 5%. I don't see South Korea taking any action on that, either committing to that or doing a supplemental budget increase on defense. This is really critical. Trump follows the American concept of actions speak louder than words. I think he's looking for action from South Korea rather than just negotiations to indicate that South Korea is getting what he's concerned about.
Right, and Seoul has been pushing for a summit between President Lee Jae-myung and Donald Trump. When can we expect this to take place?
I think you've got to show those actions first. I think President Trump is looking for clear indication that he's got a cooperative relationship going with President Lee. that they can work together and they can make some meaningful progress. But until it's clear that the South Korean government is, in particular, handling the defense issue, but also handling economic issues, reviewing in wide range many of the non-tariff benefits that Korea gets in relationship. Those are things which Trump feels very strongly about, which he's pursuing.
Right, and you just said Trump's looking for clear indications from South Korea, and Trump has been pushing for South Korea to pay more for the presence of American troops here in South Korea. How should the Korean government handle this issue?
Well, my recommendation is that South Korea goes back to the fact that maybe 10 years ago, it committed to raise its defense budget to 3% of GDP, and yet it's never gotten much above 2.5%. I think President Lee Jae-myung has been making supplemental budget increases in many of the domestic programs. A supplemental budget increase of 5 trillion won for defense would be a clear indication that he was understanding what President Trump was interested in. This is not for burden sharing. This would be to increase the capabilities, the weapon systems and capabilities of the South Korean military as the size of its forces are declining so substantially. And that would be a pretty clear indication that he's got the message and he's prepared to be responsive to President Trump.
Right, you just talked about the size of the troops, and what's also very concerning for Korea is that a U.S. think tank reportedly recommended a reduction of U.S. forces in Korea. How do you think South Korea should handle this issue?
Well, I think we have to remember that the think tank that made that recommendation is a very progressive think tank. The sense that President Trump will take their recommendations, probably not too high, unless he feels that he's not getting the reactions he's looking for from the South Korean government. His administration has said that they want to shift the attention of USFK a little bit more towards China, maybe a bit more than just a little bit. To do that, we need to have a South Korean increase in capability to meet the gaps that may have developed. That comes from an increased defense budget, so it all ties together.
I see. And as yet, neither South Korea or the U.S. have appointed ambassadors to each other's countries. What does this mean for bilateral relations, do you think?
It doesn't help bilateral relations. We both need to have it, but again, this is the actions kind of thing. If both countries are really paying attention to each other, are really concerned about their relationships, they'll both nominate ambassadors. President Trump has been very busy doing many other things, and President Lee has also been very busy focused on internal issues. But now it's really time for the two of them to get serious about the alliance relationship and enhancing that.
Right, Dr. Bennett, we'll have to see how that goes. Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
Oh, my privilege. Thank you.
President Lee Jae-myung is dispatching special envoys overseas to signal what he calls the return of democratic Korea and share his administration's policy agenda. The presidential office said Sunday that 4 delegations will visit the EU headquarters in Brussels, Belgium, as well as France, the United Kingdom, and India to strengthen South Korea's global ties. The EU team, led by former Environment Minister Yoon Yeol-jun, is scheduled to depart later on Monday, with the other 3 teams will leave by Wednesday. Each delegation is made up of 3 members, mostly sitting lawmakers, headed by a chief envoy. They plan to meet with key officials and deliver personal letters from President Lee underscoring South Korea's commitment to stronger ties. Additional envoys will be announced once schedules are finalized. A series of confirmation hearings for President Lee Jae-myung's first cabinet kicks off today. National Assembly standing committees are holding 4 hearings on Monday, including those for the nominees for Unification Minister, Science Minister, Oceans Minister, and Gender Equality Minister. while the main opposition People Power Party has vowed to examine the nominees' qualifications and moral integrity, claiming many are unfit and should step down. The ruling Democratic Party is backing the nominees, saying there are no critical flaws. Over the course of the week, 18 nominees, including 16 ministerial candidates, are scheduled to appear before the National Assembly. In South Korea, cabinet appointments are subject to parliamentary hearings, but do not require legislative approval to take effect. And President Lee Jae-myung appointed 5 vice ministers on Sunday. According to the presidential spokesperson, Choi Eun-ok has been named Vice Education Minister. The top office described her as a veteran official who has led efforts to develop national universities outside Seoul and reform primary and secondary education. At the Ministry of Science and ICT, Gu Hyuk-chae, the current head of its Planning and Coordination Office, was promoted to first vice minister. For the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs, Kang Yoon-jin, the ministry's first female director general, has been appointed. Also announced were new vice ministers of land and SMEs, along with 7 other vice ministerial level appointments, including Hong So-young, the first woman to lead the Military Manpower Administration. An international political science congress kicked off in Seoul over the weekend. Celebrating this event, President Lee Jae-myung called South Korea's democracy a beacon for people around the world, highlighting on what the country went through since the short-lived martial law by former President Yoon Suk-yeol 7 months ago. Our top office correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
Standing before a global audience, the South Korean leader Lee Jae-myung's message of the resilience of democracy was loud and clear.
우리 대한국민이 보여준 놀라운 회복력과 민주주의의 저력은 대한민국의 것인 동시에 전 세계인들의 것입니다. 우리 국민들이 직접 보여준 오색빛 K 민주주의가 길을 찾는 세계 민주 시민들에게 등불이자 새로운 이정표가 될 것으로 확신합니다.
As he made the remarks at the opening ceremony of the International Political Science Association's 2025 World Congress in Seoul on Sunday, President Lee was highly critical of the martial law incident by former President Yoon Suk-yeol, calling it a coup d'etat aimed at permanent rule. His message was also directed at what lies ahead, reconciliation.
갈등보다 대화를, 상처보다는 치유를, 대립보다는 화해를. 우리의 미래를 구할 K-민주주의의 핵심 정신은 민주주의의 가치인 자유, 평등, 연대를 철저히 복원하는 것입니다.
He went on to extend the value of democracy to the lives of the people, calling democracy and freedom inextricable.
불평등과 양극화, 빈곤의 파고가 성장을 가로막는 위기의 시대, 이때 자유란 곧 경제입니다. 자유란 굶주림을 채워줄 따뜻한 식사이고 삶을 꾸려 나갈 수 있는 괜찮은 일자리이고.
The liberal leader wrapped up his speech by describing what the future holds for democracy in a digital era, as he noted the use of smartphones to monitor abuse of power.
이미 도래한 AI 혁명이 디지털 민주주의를 더욱 발전시킴으로써 합리적 토론과 민주적 의사결정을 돕고 직접 민주주의를 강화하는.
This year's Congress runs from July 12th to 16th in the South Korean capital, under the theme of resisting autocratization in polarized societies, bringing together some 3,500 political scientists from around the world. It's the second time that Seoul hosted the event. It last hosted the Congress in 1997. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has reaffirmed Pyongyang's full alignment with Moscow on all strategic matters, following his meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov over the weekend. According to state media, the two leaders met in Wonsan, North Korea's newly opened coastal resort area. Kim emphasized their complete agreement on key international and regional issues, underscoring North Korea's unconditional support for Russia's military objectives in Ukraine. Lavrov, in return, reaffirmed Russia's commitment to deepening strategic cooperation and strengthening bilateral ties with Pyongyang. And North Korea's Mount Kumgang has been named a UNESCO World Heritage Site, while a set of prehistoric rock carvings in South Korea has also been added. Our Lee Seung-jae takes a look at the latest UNESCO World Heritage inscriptions for the two Koreas.
During the 47th session of the UNESCO World Heritage Committee in Paris on Sunday, a new addition for both South Korea and North Korea was added to the list. First, North Korea's Mount Kumgang, a scenic mountain known for its beauty, was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Listed officially as Mount Kumgang, Diamond Mountain from the Sea, the inclusion comes as the International Union for Conservation of Nature, which serve as advisory bodies to the World Heritage Committee, recommended the inclusion in May. According to UNESCO's website, Mount Kumgang is a strikingly beautiful mountain with numerous peaks and curious rocks amounting to some 1,200 waterfalls and pools formed by crystal-like clear waters flowing from hundreds of gorges, as well as with the seascape stretched along the coastline. The mountain is North Korea's third World Cultural Heritage Site after the complex of Goguryeo tombs in 2004 and the historic monuments and sites in Kaesong in 2013. Meanwhile, a set of prehistoric rock carvings located in South Korea's Ulsan has also been added to UNESCO's World Heritage List. Petroglyphs along the Pangucheon stream were officially recognized for their significant cultural value in Paris. Located along the Pangucheon stream, a tributary of the Taewon River in Ulsan, some 360 kilometers southeast of Seoul, the petroglyphs are carved into vertical cliffs depicting prehistoric hunting scenes and animals. According to the committee, the carvings are masterpieces created through the creativity of prehistoric people. And for South Korea, the inclusion of the prehistoric art spanning some 6,000 years was a long time coming.
The Korea Heritage Service will do its best to protect the value of the Pangucheon petroglyphs as a common heritage of mankind and to preserve and utilize them well.
With the latest addition, the country now has 17 entries on the UNESCO World Heritage List. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now let's take a look at some stories from around the world with our Choi-ji. Good morning, Ji.
Good morning, Inzi.
So, Ji, let's start with France announcing an accelerated military spending plan.
Right, so the French president has unveiled a plan to speed up France's spending on its armed forces by 2027. French President Emmanuel Macron announced on Sunday an accelerated military spending plan aiming to double France's armed forces budget by 2027, which is 3 years ahead of schedule as Europe faces mounting security threats. On July 13th, Macron announced an additional $7.6 billion in defense funding over 2026 and 2027, pushing France's military budget to $74.8 billion in 2027, which would be double the $37.64 billion in annual spending when Macron took office in 2017. Making an address to the armed forces on the eve of the Bastille Day national holiday, Macron described the move as essential in response to unprecedented threats, including Russia's aggression, nuclear proliferation, terrorism, and global instability. He said, "To be free in this world, we must be feared. To be feared, we must be powerful." He also said details on the 2026 budget plans will be announced on Tuesday by the Prime Minister. In the United States, a fast-moving wildfire near the Grand Canyon's North Rim has forced a full evacuation and destroyed key infrastructure. Park authorities said Sunday that the Grand Canyon Lodge, the only lodging inside the park at the North Rim, had been destroyed by the flames and evacuation orders were issued. The blaze, dubbed the Dragon Bravo Fire, rapidly grew to more than 20 square kilometers, consuming the historic Grand Canyon Lodge, visitor center, administrative offices, and a wastewater treatment plant. Park authorities evacuated all staff and approximately 500 visitors from the North Rim, which opens seasonally. The wastewater plant fire triggered a chlorine gas leak, leading officials to restrict access to inner canyon trails until air quality is verified. Nearby crews are also battling the White Sage Fire, which has burned over 40,000 acres north of the park. Cambodia celebrated the inscription of 3 former Khmer Rouge sites as UNESCO World Heritage, marking the first modern-era recognition on behalf of the Tuol Sleng Genocide Museum, Koung Ek Killing Fields, and M13 Prison. These are notorious locations used as torture and execution sites in the past. At a UNESCO meeting in Paris on July 11th, the sites were officially listed under Cambodian memorial sites, from centers of repression to places of peace and reflection. Cambodia held nationwide drum-beating ceremonies on Sunday to honor the designation. Cambodia's interim culture minister described the listing as a model for the world. 23-year-old Jannik Sinner won his first Wimbledon men's singles title on Sunday in a historic final between the world's number 1 and number 2 players, defeating defending champion Carlos Alcaraz with scores of 4-6, 6-4, 6-4, and 6-4. Sinner became the first ever Italian Wimbledon singles champion, and the victory marks his 4th Grand Slam title overall. Despite dropping the first set, Sinner played on with resilience as he won 3 consecutive sets to end his 5-match losing streak against Alcaraz. Alcaraz, seeking a 3rd consecutive Wimbledon crown, acknowledged Sinner's performance, calling their rivalry a class apart.
Grab your umbrella on your way out. Rain that's falling in eastern regions will expand nationwide, reaching the capital area in Chungcheong-do provinces as early as this morning. And this round of rain should taper off by tomorrow evening. A preliminary rain advisory is in place for east of Gangwon-do province, where intense downpours of around 50 millimeters per hour could lash down from this afternoon, with up to 120 millimeters expected through tomorrow. And a strong wind advisory could also be issued for the East Coast. But on a positive note, the heat wave alerts have all been lifted thanks to this rain. Temperatures will be as much as 9 degrees cooler than Sunday. Seoul Daejeon getting up to 28 degrees, Daegu topping out at 31 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Well, this rain is truly a welcome sight, as the prolonged heat and sunny skies have caused severe damage to agricultural crops. This week, we will see frequent rain, though temperatures will be still hovering around 30 degrees Celsius here in the capital. Take care and keep an umbrella handy.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.